On a frozen mountainside in 1959, 9 skilled hikers sliced their way out of their own tent and ran into the snow, and every one of them died. For more than 6 decades, investigators, scientists, and conspiracy theorists have tried to explain what happened that night in the northern Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union. What could frighten a group of experienced outdoorsmen so completely that they abandoned their only shelter, in temperatures well below freezing, without their boots or coats? The answer has never been fully agreed upon. This is the story of the Dyatlov Pass incident. In late January of 1959, a group of 10 students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnic Institute set out on a ski trek. Their goal was to reach a mountain called Otorten in the far north. Most were in their early 20s, athletic and highly experienced. Their leader was a determined 23-year-old named Igor Dyatlov, after whom the pass would later be named. The expedition was rated at the highest level of difficulty for the time. For these young people, it was both an adventure and a badge of honor. They were confident. They were prepared. And they kept careful diaries and photographs along the way. Early in the journey, one member named Yuri Yudin fell ill and was forced to turn back. That decision saved his life. He would spend the rest of his years haunted by the fate of his friends. The remaining 9 pressed on into increasingly harsh and remote terrain. Their photographs show smiling faces, snowball fights, and the camaraderie of a tight-knit group. The last images ever taken by their cameras capture them setting up camp on a bleak, wind-scoured slope. By all appearances, it was an ordinary evening at the end of an ordinary day. The group had planned to send a telegram once they reached their destination. When no message arrived by the expected date, families grew anxious. It was not unusual for such treks to run a few days late, so at first there was little alarm. But as the days stretched on with silence, concern turned to fear. Finally, rescue parties of volunteers, students, and soldiers were organized. They set out into the mountains, following the trekkers' planned route, hoping to find them delayed but alive. What they discovered instead would launch one of the strangest investigations in Soviet history. On the slopes of a mountain the local Mansi people called Kolet Sayakal, a name often translated as Dead Mountain, searchers found the group's tent. It was half buried in snow and badly damaged. But the most disturbing detail was how it had been damaged. The tent had been cut open from the inside. Someone, or several people, had used a knife to slash their way out rather than use the entrance. Inside, the searchers found nearly all of the hikers' belongings, their boots, their warm coats, their food. Whatever drove them out had come suddenly, and they had fled with no time to dress. Footprints led away from the tent and down the slope toward a tree line nearly a mile away. Some prints showed bare feet, others only socks. The trail suggested the group had walked, not run in blind panic, but in a strange, deliberate line. At the edge of the forest, beneath a large cedar tree, searchers found the remains of a small fire. Nearby lay the first 2 bodies. Both men were dressed only in their underwear. Branches on the cedar were broken high up, as though someone had climbed it, perhaps to look back toward the tent, or to watch for something coming. 3 more bodies were found between the tree and the tent, including that of Igor Dyatlov himself. Their position suggested they had been trying to return to the shelter when they collapsed and froze. The initial cause of death for these 5 appeared to be hypothermia. It was a tragic but almost comprehensible outcome until the search continued into the spring, when the melting snow revealed the final 4 members of the group. Their condition transformed the case from a tragedy into an enduring enigma that no simple explanation could contain. The last 4 were found in a ravine, buried under deep snow. Some were better dressed than the others, apparently having taken clothing from those who died first. But their injuries were shocking. 2 had severe chest fractures. 1 woman had major skull damage. The force required to cause such wounds, according to investigators, was comparable to a car crash. Yet there were almost no external marks on their bodies. Whatever crushed them from the inside had left the skin nearly untouched. It was a contradiction that medical examiners struggled to explain then, and that still fuels debate today. The unusual details did not end there. One of the victims was missing her tongue and eyes, though this may be explained by natural decomposition in water. Some accounts claimed the hiker's clothing contained traces of radiation. Others reported that their skin had an odd orange tint, and that their hair had turned gray, claims that remain disputed. Adding to the mystery, other travelers in the region that night reported seeing strange glowing orbs or lights moving across the sky. To many, these details hinted at something far beyond an ordinary mountain accident. The original Soviet investigation closed with a vague and unsatisfying conclusion, stating the hikers had died as a result of a compelling natural force they were unable to overcome. The case files were sealed, and the area was closed to trekkers for years afterward. That secrecy only deepened public suspicion. In the decades that followed, dozens of theories emerged. Some blamed an avalanche. Others pointed to military weapons testing, arguing the lights in the sky were secret rockets. A few even suggested an attack by the indigenous Mansi people, a theory later dismissed for lack of any evidence. More exotic ideas took hold in popular imagination. Some proposed infrasound, low-frequency sound generated by wind moving over the terrain, which can cause panic and disorientation in humans. Others suggested the group fled a katabatic wind, a rare and violent downslope gust powerful enough to feel like an attack. And of course, there were the inevitable claims of the paranormal, of secret experiments, even of encounters with something not human. Each theory could explain some details of that night, but none could account for all of them. That, more than anything, is why the mystery has endured. In 2019, Russian authorities reopened the investigation, and in 2020 they concluded that an avalanche was the most likely cause. Modern researchers, using computer modeling inspired partly by animation software, showed that a small, delayed slab avalanche on that unusual slope was physically possible. It could explain the crushing injuries and the panicked flight from the tent. For many, this was the closest thing to an answer we may ever get. Yet skeptics point out that searchers saw no clear avalanche signs, and that seasoned hikers would not have camped where one was likely. So what really happened on Dead Mountain in the winter of 1959? Was it simply a cruel accident of snow and slope, magnified by fear and darkness? Or was it something stranger, a secret that the frozen Urals have never fully surrendered? The 9 young people who set out with such confidence left behind only photographs, diaries, and questions. Their final moments remain locked in the silence of that mountainside. And perhaps that is the most haunting truth of all, that even with all our science, some doors the past closes are never meant to be reopened.